The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
The Paranormal View. The Paranormal View. The Paranormal View. Time now for the Paranormal View. The Paranormal View on the Para X Radio Network with your host, Henry Foister, Craig Rupp, and Jeffrey Gould. The Paranormal View.
All right, welcome everybody to the Paranormal View right here on the Para X Radio Network. And I want to thank those that are got the chat room just filled up, and those from around the world. Appreciate all of you listening in tonight. If you're not with us though in the chat room, you can do so. Come over to para-x.com, click on the little show chat button on the right side of the page, and then click on the player button at the top of the page, and you'll be able to interact with those in the chat room and with us by being able to ask us questions to ask our guest. And I tell you, it's going to be a great night. We have a great guest tonight. And I do want to take a minute, though, to remind everybody that next Saturday night is Christmas Eve. We will be doing a live show then. So we are doing a thing. We're trying to get people to write in Dear Santa letters to us, and we'll read those on the air. My website is down right now, so what you need to do is just send them, go to the Paranormal View at gmail.com and send the letters right to us, and just make them attention Dear Santa, and we'll get them and be reading those on the air. We'll also be doing a naughty and nice list, and different people's going to be calling in and actually sending in things that they've recorded for us to play, which will be good. And so we're just going to have a great time. So if you're free, not doing anything on New Year's Eve, because I know a lot of people does have their Christmas then, but if you're not and you're just nothing to do, come by and join us and just have a good time. That's all we're going to be doing next week.
A naughty and nice list. Should I be worried?
Oh. Craig, I don't know. I haven't got to check it yet. And we will have somebody tracking Santa, so we'll know where he's coming. And Jeff's got some things that he's going to be looking up and also sharing with us. So we're going to have a real good time. So just come right on by, and it'll be a nice, relaxed night. Unless, of course, you're on the naughty list. So...
Yeah, but usually Dave just bans them for or CC bans them for 6 hours, so we don't have to worry about that.
All right. Tonight, because we do have a lot with our guest tonight, I'm going to let Jeffrey go ahead and introduce him.
Thanks, I'm almost ready. Well, tonight's guest is Jeff Dwyer, and despite the fact that he spells his name Jeff instead of Geoff, he's the author of numerous Arius ghost hunter guidebooks, including but not limited to Los Angeles, California Wine Country, California's Gold Rush Country, Monterey and California's Central Coast, Seattle, New Orleans, and the topic we're going to be discussing mostly tonight, the San Francisco Bay Area, because I almost had a joke there, but I didn't quite get it. But definitely welcome author and paranormal investigator Jeff Dwyer.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you tonight.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be really a great night because you have lots and lots of stuff in your book, and we're going to be talking all about that. How did you get into the paranormal?
Well, my story is not too dissimilar from that of a lot of folks in this paranormal community. When I was about 12 years old, growing up in an island community in the San Francisco Bay Area, I had my first paranormal experience. Looking out the window of my home, I saw a fellow walk down the street dressed as a sailor. He looked right at me, but he seemed to have no eyes. And as I watched him, he simply faded away right in front of me. And it left me kind of shaken, but over the next year or so, my buddies and I used to run around town and get into some of these abandoned Victorian mansions, and I saw more apparitions and heard more things and had more experiences that made it clear to me that I was seeing things that were ghostly. So as I became a little older, a little wiser, I started reading a bit, and there wasn't a lot available in those days, but I did read some and realized I was seeing ghosts. Had to put that aside, however, while I was in college and getting my career going. But once I got out and got established, I've gotten back into it in a number of different ways.
Well, now, most of these places that's in your book, have you got to visit those or investigate any of them?
Yeah, I go to every place I write about. Every place in my books I will visit. And I sometimes cannot stage a classic or formal paranormal investigation because of time, or I may arrive at a place when there are a lot of tourists around, for instance, or something like that, or construction going on. So it's difficult to do what we think of as a good investigation. But I'll interview people on the site, walk around, get the vibe of the place, investigate some of the local history, and just get every bit of information I can. So I do that for literally every place in every one of my books.
Great. Then that means you're going to know quite a bit about the places. The one of them that you would probably assume that it might be, because I think a lot of people commit suicide off of it, is the Golden Gate Bridge. Is it haunted?
Yeah. Yeah, it really is, and despite the heavy flow of traffic that goes across it every day, cars, foot traffic, bicyclists, whatever, in spite of all of that, it's still considered a haunted location. And actually, it may not be that there are ghosts there, but there are environmental imprints from the intense emotional experience that people have prior to jumping off the bridge, and that leaves an imprint. These imprints are sometimes vague, like a cold spot or a spot that somebody may sense an emotional process like terror. But sometimes people see apparitions up there, just as they see apparitions looking over the railing and climbing up over it, and then they're just gone. But yeah, it's still haunted.
How do you distinguish a haunted cold spot from just being on the Golden Gate Bridge?
Yeah, it's cold up there. And Mark Twain said the coldest day he ever experienced was a summer in San Francisco. And I've been out there running around on an August night in Pacific Heights, and it's been freezing cold when the wind comes off the bay, because the water year-round is only about 50, 55 degrees, and when the wind comes off of that at night, it's going to be kind of chilly, at least by California standards. But yeah, it's tough to pick up a cold spot on the bridge, but you can find them.
So it really is one of the part of the expression, best bridges from which to jump, because not only will the distance probably kill you slamming into the water, but the cold will certainly take you out within a few moments.
Yeah, I've actually been scuba diving under the bridge when I worked as a commercial diver, and it's so dangerous when the currents run that at times we couldn't even get in the water because you couldn't stabilize the boat out there. The flow is so intense. And, of course, the outgoing tide takes you right out to the Farallon Islands, which is considered a great white shark playground. And you'll go, if your body is carried out that far, you'll be devoured by great white sharks. Wow. But, it's interesting. A lot of people jump off the bridge. They always do it facing the city of San Francisco. They don't jump off looking far out into the Pacific Ocean. The vast majority, probably more than 90%, jump off facing San Francisco and the Bay Area. And I've always wondered why that's so, why you'd want to see that as your last view of our world, but that's the way it is.
Huh. Looking out into the ocean where there's nothing might kind of scare you to where you don't want to jump.
You might not want to jump, exactly. A lot of people have survived the jump, too, and that's really interesting. I think there are recorded at least 20 people who have survived the jump, and they've survived it, but they've had serious injuries. And, of course, if you're crazy enough to jump off the bridge, you're going to do time in a mental institution, too.
Wow.
But people have survived it.
Now, I do want to remind people that if you do have questions for Jeff, you can private chat them to Craig, Jeffrey, or myself, and we'll get them right over to Jeff, which I already do have a question that's come in from the chat room. It's from Ceiling Cat.
Yay.
And she wants to know if you have been to Sam's Castle yet.
Sam's Castle. Oh, that's out there in Half Moon Bay. Yeah, I couldn't get out there when I was over there on the coast doing some research, so I couldn't get in there. No, but it's a lot of people have focused on that, think it's a haunted spot.
Wow. Well, apparently so, because Cece knows something about it. So
yeah,
I guess
good.
This other one, place called Fort Point. What is that about? Is it an island or just a fort on the tip of?
Yeah, it's a large brick fort built at the very northmost tip of San Francisco, and it replaced a Spanish fort that was established in 1770s. The Spanish fort was just mud and timbers and pretty much of insignificant military establishment. But when the Americans took over California in 1846, one of the first objectives was, of course, to make it to protect it from other foreign adventurers. So a fort was established, very similar to Fort Sumter back in Charleston, South Carolina. Now this fort is pretty huge, and it was one of the engineers who helped construct it was actually Robert E. Lee. He was out here in the 1850s when he was in the American Army, and he was one of the supervising engineers. The fort is really massive. It's a big 4-story structure, has huge guns in it. I just can't imagine how they lifted these guns into place. And its purpose was to prevent any foreign ships from entering San Francisco Bay without an invitation. So it guarded the Golden Gate. And because of its location, of course, it's directly underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. The Golden Gate Bridge actually runs right across the top of this thing. So it's really in a unique place. Now, there are the ghosts of military people at this fort. There's of course, soldiers who died there from illness or accidents, but also during the plague that hit San Francisco in 1900, a lot of people went to the fort for medical care and died there. And then, of course, there were numerous shipwrecks right there at the point where as the ships entered San Francisco Bay, and a lot of people died right there on the rocks right in front of Fort Point. So there's quite a bit of paranormal activity going on all around the place.
So did you get a chance to investigate there, and did you get anything?
Yeah, I've investigated the place, got quite a bit of the usual audio phenomenon, and got some really good video of unexplained light anomalies. But I use a psychic method of paranormal investigation mostly. I use the technical devices for just support and corroboration. And in going in there with my psychic sensitivities revved up, I've seen apparitions. Several times I've seen apparitions of just boot-clad legs from about the knee down, walking through the barracks of the place and through the gun emplacements. I've been standing alone in certain areas and heard the sound of boots on the concrete or brick pads. A number of things like that. I've actually heard cannon fire and heard shouts of men giving orders, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of imprints there. There may not be actual ghosts. It's hard to distinguish ghosts from these environmental imprints, but there's a lot of paranormal activity there.
I have another one again from Ceiling Cat. She's also, I guess, lives in San Francisco area. And she said that she has your book and uses it as a guide herself going to these different places. But she wanted to know if you've been to Brookdale and been in the tunnels there.
Yeah, I've been to Brookdale Lodge, which is in the Santa Cruz Mountains south of San Francisco, several times. Did some TV shows there. Did one for CBS called The Ghosts of Brookdale Lodge, and done a number of investigations there. I've only gotten into the tunnels once, and actually that was a long time ago before this place really came up on the radar of a lot of paranormal investigators. I happen to know somebody who was working there, and the subject just came up by happenstance, and he said, hey, there's some really neat tunnels down here. So we went down. There's a trap door behind the kitchen, and we went down. It was really cold and damp and actually had a pretty foul odor down there. Just no lights, of course. We had just small flashlights, and we poked around and didn't get to spend a lot of time down there, but at least it verified for me that the tunnels existed, because for many people, it's merely speculation. There's a lot of stories in a lot of cities about tunnels that run here and there and other places, and sometimes they're just speculation, but I've been able to get down into the Brookdale tunnels, and I know that they truly exist. How far they go and whether some of them are collapsed at this point, it's really hard to say. The tunnels are of interest for paranormal investigators because back in the late 40s and 50s, it's said that mobsters would come up to the lodge and kind of rent the place out for a week and take care of some of their meetings. The mafiosos would meet there, and they would have Hollywood people come up and spend time. Marilyn Monroe was there, and a lot of other people. And it was said that the mobsters would also invite people they wanted to rub out. That's the word they used. So they invite somebody up there, take them on a tour of the tunnels or something like that, and just shoot them and leave them. And I wanted to get down there to see if there was any kind of a ghostly vibe down there, but I couldn't pick up on that during my short time in the tunnels. But at least I know they exist.
Now, I've been to the Brookdale Lodge myself. I had a girlfriend who used to live up in the Santa Cruz area, and actually in Campbell, and we went up there. And when I hear Brookdale Lodge, you'd think I'd connect, but every so often I'm like, oh, of course, the Brookdale Lodge is with the little stream going through the dining room. And
that's it.
What?
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful little place. I wish we had the time and money to have stayed there. But yeah, there's a little girl ghost in there, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, Sarah Logan. Now, this place used to be a logging camp, and then it was taken over by a judge who made it into a resort. And he built this great big dining room. It's pretty massive. That straddles this wild creek that flows right through it. So, when you sit in there having dinner, you've got the babbling waters of this creek. And Sarah Logan was his niece, and the story goes that she was playing at the edge of the creek at about 1912, somewhere right around in there, and she fell in and hit her head on a rock and drowned. And it's hard to track down some of the details of this. I've actually researched the family extensively and had a hard time finding out information about all family members, but Sarah Logan did indeed die there, and I've actually seen her apparition. When I was about 13, we used to stay there, and I was down the edge of the creek looking at the water, and I sensed somebody right next to me. I thought it was my sister, and I turned, and kind of out of the corner of your eye, I saw her there, and I thought, well, she's here with me, and she shouldn't be down here because she was a lot younger than me. And just then, my mother called out to us from way up above the creek, and as I looked up, I saw my sister standing with my mother. And as I turned to see who was next to me, the image just faded. But I could see it was a little girl who actually looked a lot like my sister, blonde hair and wearing a white dress, that kind of thing. So I've seen Sarah Logan, and several other people have too. And in several places around the lodge, people had captured her voice on audio recorders. She does respond when you go in there and do EVP sweeps.
Okay, now Henry.
Yeah.
Doug from Ghost Soldiers and I have been talking. We're going to pick up Pat. Then we're going to pick up you. We're driving out to Cali. We're going to pick up Jeffrey. Then we're going to go visit Jeff.
Well, that sounds like a winner.
Mm-hmm. Wait, suddenly you went from picking me up to just visiting me. Wait a minute, what? Well, Jeff, take care. We're going up and going ghost hunting, and you're staying here.
Now,
it's a great place to go because the management of the place are really receptive to paranormal investigators.
Really?
I mean, they are really into it. And if you tell them what you're after, they'll open up a lot of places to you that ordinarily might be locked up.
Wow.
Oh, that's great.
Now, Ceiling Cat also sent me a message and said Brookdale also had a mermaid tank, and the mermaids wore numbers. and gentlemen would pick their mermaids and were escorted to the now gone cabins via the tunnels.
I.
Yeah, that's one of those stories. I've heard that. I couldn't verify that at all. There is a swimming pool that has a glass wall, and the glass wall opens into a bar. So you can sit at the bar and see people swimming in this pool. And I guess that's where that story comes from, because now they call this the Mermaid Bar. About 1960 or so, somewhere in there, a young teenager drowned in the pool. And since then, I've heard the pool is actually shut, and it's dry. Last time I was there, last couple times, it was dry, so they're not using it. I think it's not sound enough to hold water anyway. But the dining room with the creek in it alone is just enough to make the trip worth it. If you can go up there and just spend a few hours in there, you'll have some tremendous experiences.
So how's the food?
Well, it's not bad. When we last time I was there, we were filming for CBS, and they put out a big buffet table for us to snack on as we were there for a long time, and it was really good food. So I assume it's pretty good. Now, the bar there is pretty cozy, too. It's real popular with locals, and it's easy to go in there and meet up with some locals, and they'll tell you a lot of good stories. The bartenders and the people who work in the kitchen will tell you stories, too. And as I said, they're very receptive to paranormal investigators. And if you just tell them you want to know what's going on, they'll not only tell you the recent stories, but they'll take you in the back rooms in the kitchen and show you where everything's happening.
That actually sounds better than Falling Waters, the Frank Lloyd Wright building out near Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Wow. But now, there's this place also a lot of people has talked about that I've heard, and it's called the Presidio. Now, is that just like a fort complex or something, or is that a building in itself?
Yeah, well, it's huge. It's huge. At its peak, it was about 3,000 acres right there on the edge of San Francisco Bay, and it was established as a military establishment by the Spanish in 1770s. And the word for a military fort is Presidio. It's a military administrative center, and the Spanish trained and lived there. And when it was taken over by the Americans in 1846, it was expanded greatly. In fact, late in the 1850s, huge buildings were constructed as barracks, training centers, officers' mansions were built, which still stand today. And a hospital was built, and quite a few things. And then, of course, during World War I, it was an aviation center. There was a landing strip right there on the edge of the bay. And this continued in operation until about 1968. And as you might expect, during World War II and the Vietnam War, the place was pretty busy. It was the home of the Army's Psychological Warfare Center. And there were a lot of people there during that time doing research on remote viewing and ways of interrogating prisoners through psychic methods. So there's a lot of freaky stuff going on there. But the base closed, and the grounds were turned over to the National Park Service, and some of it went to the city of San Francisco. And you can access everything. You can drive in there and go windsurfing on the bay. People go bicycling on the old bike path, which used to be a runway. And there's little coffee shops down by the bay and things like that. There's an art center, and a lot of things have moved in there. George Lucas has one of his film centers there now, too. But there are a lot of buildings held over from these older periods. In fact, the oldest house in San Francisco is at the Presidio, and it was built in 1772 as the home of the Presidio's commanding officer. And it's a haunted place. It was investigated by the crew from Ghost Hunters. They've been out there. I think Ghost Adventures have stopped there as well. But it's haunted, and you can go in there now. Now it's a visitor center, but you can go in and see see the original walls, original floor, and get a real vibe for the past century. And then the barracks built in the late 1850s and during the Civil War period, they're all still standing. Many of them have undergone renovation, and you can walk through these places, and they're great places to look around. Plus, there's a hidden cemetery that was uncovered just a few years ago near one of the hospitals. It looks like it was a cemetery for sailors. And a lot of people think that's a hotbed for paranormal activity, but it's all fenced right now, and you can't get in there.
Now, if you don't have Jeff Dwyer's book, you need to pick one up. It's called The Ghost Hunter's Guide to the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's a nice little book, and it's got a whole lot more than just the haunted locations. But you need to pick one up, especially if you're out in California. Now, I know this place here. A lot of people has been there, and it's been on TV many times. Alcatraz. Have you got to go in there and actually investigate in that place?
Yeah, I have. It's really a great place, and it's one of those places that's visited by tourists. I don't know how many thousands go there a week, but quite a few. And whenever you have a high frequency of tourism, the thought is, well, could it still be haunted? Places like Winchester Mystery House, and even the Myrtles in St. Francisville, Louisiana, Fort Sumter, Gettysburg, places like this that are just major tourist destinations. We often wonder, how can this still be a haunted location? But Alcatraz, like these other spots, is still intensely haunted. And although you have to go through the place with a tour guide, and usually you're in a crowd of about 30 or 40 other people, there's still opportunities to sort of lag behind and do some EVP sweeps, take some pictures of the cells, and actually spend some time inside of one of the cells when there aren't a lot of people around. So when you do that, you have a lot of experiences still.
Now this place here, the San Remo Hotel.
Yeah.
What ghosts are actually roaming around there?
That's an interesting place, and the San Francisco Ghost Society had a great event there last year, and they may have another one coming up this spring. The San Remo was built right after the San Francisco earthquake. It was built in 1907 as a boarding house for all the workmen who were coming in to rebuild San Francisco. And over the decades, its clientele changed. In 1907 up to about 1918, it was workmen, and then it became people coming back from World War I, and then a lot of people who worked along the waterfront were staying there. And during World War II, a lot of sailors and soldiers who were in transit, moving in and out, going off to fight in the Pacific, stayed there for short periods of time. And of course, as you might expect, being down there in North Beach, there was a fair amount of the mafiosos were moving in there too at different times, so criminal elements. So you've got ghosts derived from all of these types of clientele. There's the ghost of a sailor that walks around the place. There's the ghost of a madam who actually operated a house of ill repute across town, but she retired and moved over to live in the San Remo, and then she died there. And her ghost, all dressed up in the flaming red gown, is seen walking around the place. There was a little girl who died there about 1908, right after the San Francisco earthquake. Drinking water was tainted because of gas and other toxic elements that got into the groundwater supply. And a lot of kids died during that period of time. And in fact, this little girl died in the San Remo after drinking tainted water, and her ghost is seen on the second and third floors running around. And then most interestingly, there's the ghost of two people who were killed during a wedding. I think this was about 1938. There was a wedding in the restaurant there, and an ex-boyfriend of the bride showed up. He didn't kill the bride or the groom, but he shot two people who were close by, and he was apprehended and sent to San Quentin, and I think he was executed there. But the ghosts of his victims are seen very often in the restaurant of the San Remo. So it's quite a bit going on in there, and again, it's a very frequented place. It's considered a boutique hotel. It's fairly cheap for San Francisco. Really interesting place. It's decked out in antiques, and despite the heavy tourism there, it's still really a haunted location.
Wow. There you go. If you want to stay in a haunted hotel, you know where to go to in San Francisco.
It's a good place. You go to this place and the doorknobs are original. That's one of the things I think that retains the imprints of people who have been there decades earlier and then they've moved on. When you have metal objects that are original and touched frequently, they retain those imprints, and you've got those all over the San Remo. And added to that, it has one of the best Italian restaurants in America. The Flor d'Italia is on the first floor. This is where that murder occurred during the wedding, 1938. And it's the oldest continuously operating Italian restaurant in the United States. It opened in 1872 in another location, but it's moved into the San Remo about 20 years ago.
Wow.
So good food. Good food.
Now, before we jump off to take a quick break, there's one other one here I would like to throw in. And it's the Queen Anne Hotel, where you have the ghosts of Miss Mary and the girls.
Oh, yeah. That's a great place. San Francisco Ghost Society has staged a Night in a Haunted Victoria event, and they may do another one in next year. So our listeners might want to check the San Francisco Ghost Society's website for updates on San Remo events and the Queen Anne Hotel events. The Queen Anne was built in 1890. James Fair, who's one of the richest men in California, making his money from the Virginia City silver mines, he funded construction of the place. It was built as a girls' finishing school, a boarding school and finishing school, and it was operated by Miss Mary Lake. And her ghost roams the fourth floor. She's in room 408, I believe, and her apparition has been seen, but more frequently her voice has been heard. She likes to sing and hum, and if you take a recorder into her room and let it run with a piano concerto or something softly playing, and then run another recorder to pick up the sound, you'll hear her or pick up her voice singing along with this recorded music. That's a pretty exciting thing to pick up. But she's there, and almost every room in the place is haunted. I've been in a lot of them, and you go in and let the recorder run, and you introduce yourself, and you ask, do you mind if I spend the night in your room? And usually you'll pick up a female voice saying, yes, I do, or no, I don't, or get out, or something like that. Because a lot of the faculty for the school lived in these rooms up on the top floor. The girls, who were aged somewhere around 12 up to about 18, 19, lived on the third floor, and then second and first floors were classrooms and rooms where instruction, dining rooms and things like that were held. But after the school closed, there was a secret club that operated the place for a long period of time, and nobody knows much about these people. I think some of the members lived there and probably died there. And then the place became quite derelict, and of course, people, homeless would move in, and drug dealers and druggies would move in and die there, and there's all kinds of vague stories about that sort of thing. But I haven't picked up much in the way of male paranormal activity there. It's intensely female.
Our time has jumped right on down. Did you guys have something real quick before we go?
Not offhand. I'm grabbing websites and stuff.
Oh, okay.
I have a bunch of questions, but we'll wait till after the break.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. I know CC was asking how about the East Bay other than the USS Hornet, which you do have a lot of that in there, and we will get to some of those also. Because you got it broke down in your book, different areas around San Francisco, and we'll try and hit some of these from all the different areas. So if you are not here with us in the chat room, please come on over, para-x.com, and click on the show chat button on the right side of the page and the player button at the top of the page. And you'll be able to interact with all the wonderful people here and with us to ask questions of our guest. So I think we're going to jump off for, 7 minutes, so somewhere around there, 6, 7, 8.
Okay.
And we'll be back and pick up some more with Jeff Dwyer and his book. And Craig, I know you're just really wanting to take us out on break.
Am I really? Thanks everybody for tuning in to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. We'll be right back.
Whether you're listening at home, at work, or anywhere, thanks for making Para-X part of your day. your source for everything paranormal. Para-X.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Paranormal View right here on the Para-X Radio Network. And we just have people listening from all around the world tonight and from right here in the chat room. Appreciate each and every one of you. So let's get back to Jeff Dwyer, because you've got a lot in that book, and we aren't going to get it all in tonight. I can see that already. A couple others, and Craig, I know you've got some questions too. Why don't you go ahead and ask some first? How's that sound?
I do, actually. A couple places interest me. The John Muir House. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, a lot of us know John Muir as one of the first environmentalists in California. A lot of places are named for him. A lot of cities have Muir High School or Muir Middle School. There's a Muir Street. There's a John Muir Trail in the Sierras. He moved into this big house. I was just there today, actually. It's over in across the bay here, over in Martinez, little community across the Sacramento River from the northern part of the Bay Area. And it's a huge Victorian mansion. I think it's probably 6,000 square feet. Sits on a knoll. And like so many places, it used to be surrounded by a couple hundred acres of orchards and so forth. And now I think there's only about 5 acres left. There's a huge freeway that cuts right behind the place. But you can see it from the freeway. And it's a really interesting spot. His house is probably haunted by one of his daughters, because in my investigation there, I uncovered a female spirit in the children's room. There's a lot of games and toys and dolls and that sort of thing still in the room, all period artifacts. And I picked up on this female presence at a young age. Now, his daughters did not die young, but they may have left behind some intense imprints, or it might have been a granddaughter or niece or somebody like that who was living in the house and actually died there. It's just not clear at all. Most of us don't believe that John Muir is in the place, but possibly some of his relatives are.
Have you gotten any evidence, EVPs or otherwise?
Yeah, I've got some audio stuff there and the usual light anomalies that are really hard to sort out. Unfortunately, digital photography is really convenient compared to film. There's no question about that, but there's lots of opportunities for artifact when you do digital photography, and you pick up on some of these from time to time. It's almost unheard of that you get a picture with a digital camera that really looks like a human being that can be identified from historical photographs. That's virtually unheard of, and I haven't gotten that, certainly. But in my psychic sensitivities suggest to me that there's a young female spirit in that room, or some residual, some imprint of a young female that spent a lot of time in that room, possibly was sick in that room, and so she generated a lot of intense, repetitive, emotional experiences that were laid down on the environment. Or it's possible that her spirit may still be there, because there are a lot of enticements. As I said, there's toys and games and dolls and clothing from that era all over the place, and it looks as though you've walked into a room from, the 1890s or something like that. So any possibility should be considered, but I think there probably is a ghost there.
I was looking at some of these the pictures of these places, and what struck me is these are places that I would love to go to. Another place is the Falkirk Mansion.
Oh yeah, that's a great place. My daughter and I have investigated that place, and in fact, I think her picture's in the book there too. Yeah, Falkirk is over in San Rafael area. It's Marin County, north of the Golden Gate. It's considered the North Bay, and this mansion was built back in the 19th century, and has all this beautiful woodwork in there. The original structure was quite beautiful, but the woman who built it didn't stay there long. Now, she left, and then it was bought by somebody who owned a lumber yard, a lumber business, and he's the one who brought in all these artisans to put up this magnificent woodwork all over the place. But there are ghosts there. In fact, there's an angry butler who locked my daughter in the downstairs restroom and created quite a frightening experience for her. because the lock doesn't work. We found out that the lock doesn't work. It's broken in an open position, and so how my daughter was actually locked in there, nobody could explain, but she was in, and we couldn't get the door open for the longest time until we finally asked that this fella just leave her alone, and sure enough, suddenly the door just popped right open. And we've encountered his spirit on the back stairs, which is, story goes that the children of this lumber baron who owned the place used to run up and down these back stairs, and the story goes by one of the descendants that the butler used to get angry with them and chase them off the stairs. And so his spirit is still there, getting after any kids that roam around the place.
So he was a little on the nose about the butler did it then, right?
Yep, that's exactly true. The butler did do it in this place. But it's a community center now, and unfortunately the upper floors have been made into some sort of an art gallery, and a lot of woodwork is still there from the original. I mean, you can see the floors and the doors and all that, but the walls are all stark white in order to present the art, I guess, in its most appealing way. And to me, it's such contrast to the first floor, which looks as though it's just as it was back in the 19th century. It looks beautiful, gorgeous woodwork and windows, and huge fireplaces too. It's really magnificent. Anybody up in the North Bay, that's a good place to stop. Falkirk Mansion.
Now, another place that interested me was Rose Hill Cemetery. What's the history behind that?
That's a freaky place. Really freaky. Yeah, okay, well, really freaky.
You just answered one of my other questions, the freakiest place you've ever been to. So,
well, it's one of them, and it's a weird place. This cemetery, Rose Hill Cemetery, is quite a ways from San Francisco Bay, but not far from the Sacramento River, which pours into San Francisco Bay. So it was the community which grew up there, which was called Nortonville, was in a good location because it was a coal mining area. Now, we don't think too much about coal mining in the San Francisco Bay Area, but there was a lot of coal mined out there. So they brought these Cornish coal miners from England, families and everybody, brought them all over here, built these towns, these villages. They built 3 villages up there, had the general store and a church and a school and all that, and cabins for the workers. And these fellows would work in the mines 12 hours, 6 days a week. And the coal would be carried just a short distance down to the edge of the Sacramento River, put on barges, and taken down to San Francisco to be used in the city. Well, of course, as you might imagine, there are lots of cave-ins, a lot of illnesses and injuries from breathing in coal dust and cave-ins and that sort of thing. And when you walk around this place, there's really hardly anything left of these 3 villages. But you look around, especially on a summer day when it's bloody hot and dry out there, and you think, how do these people survive? Drinking warm water at best to cool off. And it's a hot place, and these days when you go out there, you've got to be careful of rattlesnakes, and even mountain lions have been seen out there. But you can roam around, and the cemetery is up a pretty good climb from where the villages were, so you have to have good shoes and water and a hat on and all that. And you go up there, and it's desolate, and that adds to its freaky and the freakiness of the place. And a lot of tombstones have been broken by vandals. Many of them have been stolen, and graves. There's been attempts to open the graves. And it's believed that all of this vandalism has created a lot of unrest with the spirits there. And so it's considered quite a paranormally active spot, and one that you don't really want to go to at night unless you're with a large number of people.
Wow. Now, tell us a little bit about the, see if I get this right, the Monterey Hotel?
Oh, down in Monterey?
Monterey.
Down in the city of Monterey, yeah. Now, that place, that's really interesting. That was built just after the turn of the century, I think 1903, something like that. And it's right there on Alvarado Street. Really neat place. It's recently expanded. And if you stay in the Monterey Hotel, you got to ask to stay in the old part of the hotel because that's where a lot of the stuff is there. And I stayed in there and had some really freaky experiences of numbers showing up on my cell phone screen, repetitive numbers, and heard this man walking around my room talking about, 72 this, 72 that, 13 this, a lot of numbers he's talking about. And we think it's a workman who died in the elevator shaft who thinks he's still on duty. And he's talking about the number of stairs, the number of doors, that sort of thing. So he roams around this place. It's beautiful. It's fairly inexpensive for Monterey. It's right in the heart of Monterey, so you can walk to everything, including Fisherman's Wharf, and you can even walk to the aquarium from this hotel. So it's a good place to stay, and they are into the paranormal there, too. The manager of the hotel took me all over the place and introduced me to staff members who all told me their stories. So if you go there, tell them who you are, that you're a paranormal investigator, and you'll hear a lot of fascinating stories about this place. There's images of apparitions of people show up in the mirrors. There's a lot of antique mirrors in the place, a lot of original doorknobs and things of that sort. So there's a lot of imprint phenomenon going on there. It's a good place to go.
Now, it's good that a lot of these places allow investigators to come in. And a lot of them I haven't heard of before. So them being fairly haunted like that, you get a lot of evidence. Those would be neat places to go to.
Yeah, there's a dichotomy in places between those that really welcome paranormal investigators and share stories with you and let you get into places that are ordinarily off limits to the public. And then in contrast to that, there are other places that absolutely do not want to talk about it at all. And I found that up in the California gold or wine country, up here in the Napa area in particular, a lot of the wineries simply don't make any comments. And if you tell them you want to look around, you're a paranormal investigator, they'll insist there's absolutely no ghostly activity. There's no reason to investigate the place. No one has ever experienced anything at all. And you'll get that line from people in charge. But if you can contact people who used to work there or still work there, but who will talk to you on the side, you'll hear quite a few stories about a lot of the wineries. But in contrast, if you go to Sonoma area, you'll get just a different kind of approach. There's one winery over there called Bartholomew Park, which I wrote about in my wine country book, and they're very open to paranormal investigators. They've staged paranormal events there, and if you make contact with them and explain what you want to do, they will accommodate you, keep the place open for you at night, let you stay in there and investigate.
So essentially, when you go to these wineries and you say, I understand that there's a reputation for haunting, and they say, well, no, there's no such thing, you just say, well, I guess I should take my money over to Sonoma then, and where they have ghosts, and they'll take my money.
Yeah, well, that's true, but the trouble with a lot of Napa places is they don't care where the money goes because they still got plenty of it. They are doing very well up in the Napa area. There are a few places up there that are, that will let you roam around a little bit. But a lot of places, for the most part, the policy is no, they don't know anything about ghostly activity, and no, you can't look around. So what I do when I go to some of these places is simply I just don't tell them who I am and hope they don't recognize me. And I roam around, and I'll try to find some employee who looks like he might be approachable, and I'll just wander up and talk about the beautiful architecture and fascinating history of the old building, and then I'll mention, parts of it have this kind of a creepy vibe to it. I'll use that term. And just kind of see what reaction I get from this person. And if they feel like, there's a rapport there, they'll say, oh, yeah, well, there's a ghost there, or there's a freaky thing there, and next thing you know, you're picking up on information that is really hard to come by. So you have to kind of sort of conceal your motives sometimes when you go to these places.
I actually do that a lot in Gettysburg, Jeff. I'll take the day tour, but like you said earlier, I'll lag behind, try to be inconspicuous, leave my recorder in my hand, and just let it roll. See what I pick up.
Yeah. that's what you have to do. Lag behind, pretend that you didn't realize the group was leaving a particular spot, and or you can even get lost. You can do that too,
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting lamp over there. I want to look at this for a while,
Yeah. I got lost in Hearst San Simeon Castle down there on the California Central Coast once. That place, very haunted, but very strict. And in terms of how you go through the place, they take you through by tour guide, and sometimes there's two guides, one in the front of the group, one in the back, to pick up on the stragglers. Yeah, but I was lucky enough to go through there with one tour guide, and the group was stringing out like a bunch of sheep, and I fell way behind and accidentally made the wrong turn. And it was about 15, 20 minutes before I could find my way back to, a group. So
it's a shame when you do that, doesn't it?
Yeah. And, it's honest for me to go into a place and talk to people and say, I'm a historian. I'm fascinated by architecture. I'm visiting, and I've just read a little bit about the history of this building, and I wonder if you could tell me, what you know about it. That's honest. I am an amateur historian, and I am really into architecture. You don't have to bring up the topic of ghosts right off the bat.
Now, there's this other place that was also in a movie, and just happens to be the same name as what the movie was, and it's called the Hotel Vertigo.
Oh yeah, that's actually one of my favorite Jimmy Stewart movies of all time. It's a Hitchcock movie, and I've recommended that to people for a number of reasons, and one of them is that it shows San Francisco in the 1950s in a way that you just simply can't get by looking at a book. I mean, all these street scenes of people moving about and the way they're dressed and the cars and that sort of thing. It's really fascinating. So you can get the movie Vertigo on Netflix, and I'd definitely suggest you check it out. But the Vertigo Hotel was featured in the movie. It wasn't called the Vertigo Hotel in the movie itself, but it became pretty well known because it was predominantly featured in the film. And it's haunted. Back in the 30s, it was known as a speakeasy. During the Prohibition era, 20s and 30s, liquor was outlawed, if you can imagine that. And there were a lot of bars underground, literally, built in the basements of hotels and stuff. And hotel guests could get in, and others that were well known by the operators of these places could get in and drink and sometimes gamble as well. There was a piano player at this place, and he supposedly committed suicide in the bar, and he still shows up there. The place was renovated not long ago, about a year and a half ago, and the renovation didn't drive him away. He's still there walking around. You see this guy with black slick back hair and wearing what looks like a tuxedo from the 20s or 30s, and he's still there.
Now, there's a couple others here that in this particular area that I want to try and get in before we move to some of the others. The one of them is the White Witch of Niles Canyon Road. Mm-hmm.
Really interesting story about that place, because the White Witch is a Bay Area legend. It started out actually over in Nortonville, which we were talking about earlier at the Rose Hill Cemetery. There's a woman named Granny Norton who died in a buggy accident about 1878. And soon after her death, her apparition was seen in the Rose Hill Cemetery and in other places closer to the Central Bay Area, particularly Oakland Hills. And she got the nickname White Witch because she appears in a white gown, and she used to show up in the Oakland Hills scaring teenagers who went up there to park their cars and make out with their girlfriends. And when I was growing up in the Bay Area, there were a lot of stories about if you went up to the Oakland Hills, you might get scared by the White Witch. And we went up there several times trying to see her. Never really did up there. But over in the Niles Canyon, which is in the southeastern section of the Bay Area, there's an apparition also called a White Witch. And there was some thought that this might be Granny Norton who's moving down to the South Bay, but it really isn't. It really isn't. It's the ghost of a woman who's dressed in white, and she died there probably in about 1920, 28, somewhere around in that area. And she died in a buggy accident. And in my book, I make the point that this is one of those areas where extensive research really can help you quite a bit. Ann Martin, who's a psychic down in the Bay Area, did an investigation over there. And she picked up on a last name of Lowry, and I investigated that. And to make a long story short, found out that there was, in fact, a woman who lived in San Francisco as a child, moved to the Niles Canyon area when she was about 10, and at about the age of 18 or 19, she actually died in a buggy accident. Her buggy was, she was driving this horse-drawn buggy along the side of the road, and a car came along. And, of course, you can imagine cars in that era were noisy and spewing out fumes, and it scared the horse. It tipped the buggy, and she hit the roadbed, and then a second car ran over her. So when I investigated her, I found an obituary, an obscure obituary that said she died in an accident by cars, and the plural word cars really intrigued me until I found out that she was, the buggy was tipped over by one car, and then she was run over by a second car. So It kind of confirmed the story along the way. But she's still in this Niles Canyon area, and this is a spot where a friend of mine who's a profound skeptic, he went bike riding up there, and not long ago he told me on air in San Francisco, at a radio station, he told me that he now feels like there's really something paranormal up there in the Niles Canyon because he was riding his bike through there, and he just had this profound sense of fear and pain and anguish. All these things just hit him at once with no apparent explanation. And it was right at this spot where we believe this accident occurred. And this occurred in broad daylight, too.
Wow. Now, there's one other place I want to get in here real quick before we do take another break. And it's got a funny name. It's called Heinold's First and Last Chance Saloon. What is what is haunted about that?
Well, Johnny Heinold is the one who built the place, or at least bought it soon after it was built. This place is at Jack London Square in Oakland on the edge of San Francisco Bay. Really neat area to go to because there's a lot of spots down there to eat and drink, and you can see the boats and all that stuff. But this bar was constructed from timber salvaged from a whaling ship that was run aground right at that spot. It was run aground and left derelict, and so somebody took the timbers and built this bar. So you've got all that residual from the whaling ship put into this place. And it was built on pretty soft ground, so when you go in the bar, the floor dips tremendously. I mean, it's just not a little bit of a ripple in the floor. I mean, you will literally roll from the front door all the way to the rear of this place if you don't watch your step, because it's pretty steep in there. And it's dark and dank and original woodwork all over. The bar is original from the 1870s. Jack London used to hang out there when he was down on the waterfront, hanging out with some of the rough kids that he used to run with. He used to hang out at Heinold's, and in books about his life, you can see photographs of this place. There's one of Jack sitting at a table at the bar studying, doing his homework, and that photograph still hangs inside the bar. And then when he was about 18 or 19, he actually worked there for a while, so there's a photograph of him standing at the end of the bar with an apron on, and that also hangs in the bar, but it can be found in several books about Jack London. So his spirit, many think, is still there, but more likely the ghosts that are there are ghosts of people who died in the area, alcoholics, sailors, that sort of thing, who lived nearby or just literally lived in the bar and may have just keeled over one night during heavy drinking. It's very likely that's the case. The place is decorated with souvenirs from people. When people went off to fight in World War II and Korea and Vietnam, they went in there and hung up on the ceiling hats and left cards and notes and other things on the ceiling with the idea they'd come back and pick those things up, and many of these people never came back, and all that stuff is still hanging there. So there's a lot of imprint stuff going on there too. But it's a neat place to go. It's still a popular bar. It's real tiny, so you may have to squeeze in there among the crowd, but it's a great place to go.
Yeah, Cece said that that's one of her favorite places to go to hang out. So.
Yeah, it's called the last and first chance saloon because there used to be a ferry boat from this spot going across the Oakland estuary to Alameda, which was my home. Alameda's an island, and Alameda was a dry town back in the first half of the 20th century, I believe. You couldn't get a drink over there. So if you left Oakland, Heinhold's Saloon was your last chance to get a drink. And then when you came back from Alameda, Heinhold's was your first chance to get a drink. So it was called the first and last chance saloon and still is.
Now, we're going to jump off, take another break here in just a second, but I do want to remind everybody that next week we will be doing a live show for Christmas Eve. So if you're not doing anything, you have the chance, stop by and sit around with us. We'll be just having a fun little show all about the magic of Christmas. And we'll be doing some fun little things in it, so you'll really like it. Now, also, the following week, which will be New Year's Eve, we have the privilege also of doing that one, and we will be live then. We will be doing some other unusual things, and no matter what you want to drink, bring your own bottle, because we will be playing some of those drinking games throughout the night as we're leading up toward midnight for the new year. So
already ahead of you, Henry.
So you can join us then too. So we'll have lots of fun. Jeff, you want to take us on out for another break?
Sure, absolutely.
Sure.
You're. Oh, sorry. You meant me. You should call me Badger tonight, I think.
Oh yeah.
Because you got to remember, we're homonyms tonight. We've got a host and the guest who have almost the same name. Well, you're listening to the Paranormal View on para-x.com with tonight's guest, author and paranormal investigator Jeff Dwyer, author of numerous area ghost hunter guidebooks. So many in my side of the country, you should, everybody really needs to come visit Jeff Dwyer and me over here in California. So stay tuned.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Paranormal View right here on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank all those for listening from around the world and for those here in the chat room with us. Tonight we have listeners from the U.S., Canada, Ireland, the UK, and about 3 or 4 from the other place, wherever that's at. I guess we can jump right on back in here to with our guest, Jeff Dwyer. I want to welcome you back and thank you for doing a show with us tonight.
Oh, it's been great fun.
And Jeffrey, you or Craig, either one, got anything from chat room?
Not from the chat room,
okay.
No.
If you do have questions out there and you're not in the chat room, come over to para-x.com. Click on the show chat button on the right side of the page, and then click on the player button at the top of the page, and you can listen to the show and interact with the people in the chat room, and also private chat either Craig, Jeffrey, or myself with questions for Jeff Dwyer. So come right on over. You'll be more than welcome. It's all these wonderful people that's in here. Let's move on to a different place now around San Francisco. This place here is called the Union Hotel, and it's supposed to be full of ghosts. Is it used as a hotel still, or what's some of the activity there?
It still is, and it's in the town of Benicia. And Benicia is over in the northeast area of the Bay Area. It's a really nice little town right on the edge of the Sacramento River where it empties into San Francisco Bay. And for a short time, Benicia was actually the capital of California. it was considered an ideal location because it was halfway between the inland territories of cattle ranches and gold rush areas and San Francisco proper city, which was where all the banks were. So Benicia was considered the ideal place for a capital, but it didn't last long. But still, the town is really, really quaint and cute. And along First Street, there are a lot of buildings that date from the 1850s, 1860s. And one of them is the Benicia Hotel, or the Union Hotel, as it's known now. This place was a destination for people coming back from the gold rush country. And it's said that a lot of miners came back and they hid their gold inside the walls so they could go out and get a meal and spend time with the ladies in the bar, that sort of thing, because there just weren't any safes that you could put it in. You couldn't carry it around too easily. So there's still a lot of people who would like to get their hands and get into a hotel room some night and rip all the drywall off the walls, or look behind some of the brick walls and see if you could find sacks of gold. It's said that there are tunnels underneath the hotel that run from there to other buildings on First Street that used to be bars, brothels, that sort of thing. I'm not sure about that. It seems to me that when the sewers were put in, they would have been discovered. They might have been discovered, but just nothing was said about it. But the place is still haunted by both men and women, female and male ghosts, probably from the gold rush era or the period of time soon after that, like the 1870s.
Now
I got a question from the chat room.
All right.
Bob Nichols.
Okay.
Jeff, of all the places in your area that you have not investigated, which would be the place that you would really like to go to investigate?
Well, that's hard to say because there's a whole bunch of places I get notification about. People call me up or email me and they tell me about haunted houses and places like that, places that really aren't accessible. And yeah, it sounds really intriguing. There's one house I investigated over in the East Bay that was the home of a murderer. That was really fascinating, and I think I would love to get back into that place if I could. That would, to me, be a really neat place to go. There's a house down in Oakland called the Pardee House, which I visited. I've been inside, but I've not been able to stage an investigation there, and I'd really like to do that. The Pardee family lived there, and Mr. Pardee actually became governor of California at one time. And I'd really like to get in there and investigate. I think that would be really a hot spot to do. Of course, Alcatraz is always fun. I'd like to get out to Alcatraz and have the place to myself, but I don't think that's possible.
I'm sure that they would want quite a bit of money for a private investigation like that.
Yeah. And they have all the advertising they need. The boats are always full taking people out to Alcatraz, so they don't really need to bring in a paranormal investigator to verify that the place is haunted.
Now, there's also something else that's unique kind of to Benicia, and that is they also have ghosts that roam the streets in the city.
Yeah, First Street is considered a real hot spot, and there's so many buildings there, as I said, that date from the 1850s, 1860s. And a lot of these are modern businesses now, but if you go in and talk to people who work there, they'll tell you a bit of the history of the place and also tell you about the strange things that are going on there. Usually things are being moved and doors are opening and closing and lights go on and off and strange voices are heard as if someone's whispering in your ear. That sort of thing goes on all the time. But I've seen apparitions actually on First Street, some of them completely lifelike, and I've actually spoken to them, and they respond. They don't carry on a conversation generally, but they respond as if they recognize that I'm speaking to them, and then they just fade away in front of my eyes. So I've seen that a number of times on First Street. So you don't necessarily have to get inside of some of these buildings, although a lot of spots are completely accessible to people who just wander around.
Now, does most of these sightings and stuff take place at night, or can you actually see things like that in the daytime?
Well, it's really a good question because it's so cliche that ghost hunters, paranormal investigators are out there in the middle of the night. I mean, you look at Taps, for instance, on their TV show, and they always make a big deal about setting up their stuff late at night and go dark. Let's turn out all the lights, and yes, I think ghosts will likely show up more when the environment is calm and still, but most of my apparition sightings have occurred in broad daylight, not at night at all. In fact, some of them that are completely lifelike are in bright sunshine, in fact. One of the very earliest I had that was quite amazing was out in the middle of Nevada. I was, at the time, riding a horse across part of Nevada. It was a long trip, and I was with some other horse people, and leaving camp late one morning, I was leaving alone, and I saw two people look like they were returning to camp, but they were wearing buckskins or clothing that looked like buckskins, and as I got closer, I could tell that they were not part of the group I was riding with. And sure enough, one of them had a long rifle across his lap, and the men on the horse and the horses themselves were completely lifelike. And I watched them for several seconds, and they faded away and came back and faded away again. And that was in bright sunshine of early morning. So I kind of chuckle sometimes when I hear about people, planning an investigation at 3 in the morning someplace, and I'm thinking, my God, why do you want to go there at 3 in the morning?
Right.
If people who work in a place are telling you that while they're working during the day they're hearing voices or something like that, that's when you want to be there. You don't need to go back at 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
I've talked to a couple of people about trying to get a group together just to do daylight investigations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the key may be to get the place quiet, but you can do that, especially if you're investigating someone's home or a business or something like that. And even some historic sites, they may be closed one day a week when the curator will let you come in and do an investigation. But as long as you get the place kind of quiet and subdued and calm, I think you can see apparitions at any time of day. And I just don't think you have to do this dead time stuff, and you don't have to have all the lights off either.
No, that's where TV comes in for their ratings, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Right.
I've got just as much stuff in Gettysburg at 2 o'clock in the afternoon as I have any other time.
Yeah.
And that's why you're walking around on dry land.
Yeah, a lot of people who get stuff at Gettysburg do it in, the middle of the afternoon in August. It's you're not out there at 2 in the morning. So yeah, it's fine. Sometimes if you use a psychic method, it has a lot to do with how you prepare yourself. If you have to use a meditation technique to clear your mind and to protect yourself against internal and external distractions, and then you can actually see and hear quite a bit. If you're using technical devices, then of course you want to eliminate extraneous sounds and stray lights and things of that sort, and so you've got to get the place quiet. But yeah, I'm all for this, daytime investigation.
I have another question that's come in from Cece, and she wants to know, have you ever been to the People's Temple, which was Jim Jones Church of the Division Darrow section?
No, I haven't, but I've been to the cemetery where about 700 of his victims are buried in Oakland. The place is called the Evergreen Cemetery. And there's a common headstone there, but a mass grave. And you'll get a lot of strange stuff there. And I don't think there's necessarily ghosts there, although that may be the case. But what you get in cemeteries is environmental imprints of the emotions that visitors pour out when they visit these places. And I tell people that you can go to cemeteries. It's a good place to go to practice your paranormal investigative techniques. Good place to take beginners to train them too, because there are a lot of imprint phenomenon that are there. And this occurs because people go visit the graves of their loved ones and pour out their emotions and create these emotional imprints. And in some cases, the visits are repetitive. And the places where you're going to find most of these imprints are at the graves of children. And if you can imagine the parents of a dead child visiting that grave very frequently for many, many years, not just on a birthday or Christmas or something like that, but maybe weekly or at least monthly for many, many years, and pouring out these intense emotions that just get imprinted on this gravestone. And you can go there and pick up on sobbing and voices and all kinds of strange sounds. But you'll get a lot of that at the site of this mass grave from the People's Temple victims over in Oakland.
Now,
The People's Temple, that wasn't like Heaven's Gate or anything. What? I don't know the People's Temple.
No, that was Heaven's Gate was down in Newport Beach, and now People's Temple was Jim Jones. He was an evangelist. He rounded up a lot of people, got a lot of people to buy into his style of religion, and told them they had to establish a community down in Guyana.
Yeah, I knew about
Took them
that.
down there, and because they were being investigated by a congressman, Leo Ryan, he got them to all drink this arsenic Kool-Aid.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and about 1,000 of them died there. You know, and the people were so brainwashed that parents were pouring the Kool-Aid down the throats of their children who were resisting. But they really thought this was going to be the way to go on to heaven with this whole group of people. So a lot of them were from Oakland, and as I said, about 700 of them were brought home and put in this mass grave in Oakland.
Wow.
The Heaven's Gate thing down in Newport Beach was another deal. That was another...
that was a doomsday cult. Here we go.
Yeah, this fellow thought, he convinced a lot of people that if they could be liberated from their bodies, they could travel up to space and go aboard a spaceship that was traveling just behind the tail of the Hale-Bopp comet that was visible, I think, way back in 1990, 91, somewhere around in there. You could see it very plainly up here in the Bay Area. And he convinced them they had to commit suicide to do this. So they all got into their bunks and committed suicide and supposedly went off to the spaceship.
And they're still floating out there, too.
Yeah.
You know, the house that they did this in was a beautiful home down in the Newport Beach area, but, of course, right away it was recognized that you could never sell the place.
Right.
So it was completely torn down.
Wow.
And they even tore out the foundation. And then the land sat vacant for a long time. But I've always wondered if the new structure that's there would have any paranormal activity going on at that site.
Built on the same land. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that.
Yeah. Now, there's this other one here. It's about ghosts in the trains. And what's the stories about the antique mall there?
Oh, the Antique Mall is a great place. You know, if you want to pick up on a lot of residual stuff and some ghosts, go to a large antique store. I mean, we're a really big place. This place that's over here in Cordelia Junction, I think it's huge. It's just probably 10, 12,000, 15,000 square feet. It's a massive warehouse-type place. But along one wall, they've got a bunch of railroad cars, and these were club cars and dining hall cars and cars that had compartments where people spent the night as they traveled for several days on a train from the East Coast to the West Coast and so forth. And there's a lot of residual stuff there. We picked up on some ghosts there, too. There's a ghost of a fellow who probably was a porter in one of the trains. And the whole antique store is really interesting because there's so many antiques there, as you can imagine, with this huge volume of space. And the staff that works there tells me frequently about apparitions showing up near furniture, collections of dishes and silverware and even clothing. And this stuff goes on all the time. And this would be a really good spot for somebody to stage an investigation because the management is really into the paranormal.
Okay, we can put that on our list.
Mm-hmm.
Does the antique store actually have a name, or is it actually called Large Antique Store? I mean,
It's the Cordelia Antique Mart, M-A-R-T. Yeah, it's in my book, and you can Google it, and it's a good spot. It's just over the hill from Vallejo, it's still considered Bay Area, but it's just a little bit outside of the Bay Area proper. But it's a great place to go, and it's got so much stuff in there, and I think a lot of the stuff comes along with imprints, certainly, and some of it comes with ghosts.
Wow.
So sort of like John Zaffis would enjoy being there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, maybe, I've actually suggested he might want to show up. I don't know if his show's going to come back on or not. The trouble with John, though, is he'd want to take home the artifact, and I don't think these people would let him take it home unless he paid for it.
Yeah, I always like the way at the end of his shows he sort of coerces, you don't really want to keep this, do you? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What troubles me about that is he takes these artifacts home, and the theory is these artifacts have trouble attached to them in the way of some sort of disruptive spirit, but he takes them home. And why would you want to do that, And he's got them all down there in his basement, so his house has got to be a mess of paranormal activity.
His house. It's like being in the poltergeist house, I'm sure, where you all get sucked into another dimension and all that.
Oh, yeah, it's just got to be crazy there, so I don't know why he wants to do that.
Believe me, John has good connections. They are all blessed.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's this other place called the Greenwood Mansion. It's got a pretty good ghost story with that one.
Yeah, it's for sale for $1.6 million if you want to buy into some Bay Area real estate.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, the Greenwood Mansion was the home of John Greenwood and his wife, and they were attacked one evening, about 1892 or so, and some couple of fellows came along and they tried to rob the Greenwoods, and they ended up killing Melissa or Melinda. I forgot her name actually right now, but they killed the wife, and they shot John, beat him up, left him for dead, but he didn't die. And these fellows were actually apprehended a few years later, and one of them was the last person to be executed in a public hanging in California. I think he was hung in Napa about 1902 or something like that. And he was the last person executed. But the mansion was haunted by both John and his wife's ghosts. Both of them are there. They've been there for a long, long time now, over a century. And the place became, it was derelict for many, many years. Then it became the offices for the Napa Business Park near the Napa Airport, where it stands. It stands right near the airport. And they've moved out, and the place is vacant, and it's for sale. So if a ghost hunter wants to have a genuinely haunted house, you just got to cough up the $1.6 million.
Well, maybe we can win the lottery.
Well, you could do that. Yeah, you could win the lottery, and you could turn it into a B&B, and probably ghost hunters would go there.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of these venues that allow overnight stays, they're making lots of money. Places like Preston Castle, for instance, and other places that allow you to stay overnight, they charge a fair amount of money for that.
Now, this other place, go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, now I hear Craig's chair.
Oh,
that wasn't mine. I didn't move.
Uh-oh. That ain't
Really?
mine. Yeah.
Oh,
No, I swear I didn't move.
okay. Oh. Another, yeah.
Well, this other place seemed like it was a pretty interesting place called the China Camp Regional Park, an old Chinese fishing village. What kind of haunting goes on there?
That's a really neat place. It turns out that back in the 19th century, Chinese are, pretty well persecuted, and they developed their own little community over there in Marin County. And they were a community of fishermen. They would go out and catch shrimp and then send the shrimp down to San Francisco by barges, and it would be consumed down there. But it was a community, sometimes it was as large as 500 people, including men, women, and children. And they had boats, and they built their boats there, and they had shacks that they lived in. Some of these buildings remain. Some of them have been restored. Some of them have just simply been, reproduced. But you can go there. It's a state park or regional park, and you can roam around and see foundations of places. And when I was there many years ago, I saw the apparition of one of the Chinese fishing boats come cruising along the calm waters right near the shore. And that was a pretty freaky thing. But a lot of old ships are frequently sighted on San Francisco Bay. And then walking around the place, sometimes if you get into a quiet location, you'll hear this strange whispering in your ears of somebody speaking Chinese. And, these days you're not likely to see that or hear that sort of thing over there. But it's one of those, probably an imprint that's going on. The village burned a couple of times. A lot of these camps or villages were pretty flimsy and, made of dried wood. It caught fire rather easily. So there are a number of fires, most likely several deaths, probably a lot of graves over there that are unmarked because, people would die and they would be buried in the gravestone. It might not be a stone. It might be just a piece of wood that marked the grave. And, of course, that'd be washed away in or winter storms and maybe burned up in fires. And so you've got unmarked graves, and you've got a lot of imprint phenomenon. So that's a really neat place to go to. It's over in Marin County, not far from the Falkirk Mansion, which you talked about earlier.
Now, there's this one place, and it's called Angel Island. Do you have to just take a boat to get to it, or what's on there? And
it's either a boat or you swim. And it's a little too far to swim. Plus it's dangerous waters out there too. Yeah, Angel Island is really a neat place. So much has gone on there. I mean, there's all kinds of sources of paranormal activity. The place was an army outpost back in the Civil War era, and there was at least one murder that went on there that I wrote about in my book. There were duels that were staged out there. There were prisoners of war that were kept there during World War I and World War II. And there was one facility on the north side of the island which was an immigration center where Chinese and Japanese women were brought in, some men too, but mostly women. They were brought in and kept there and quarantined for long periods of time, and some of them had disease and died there. And the place has been restored recently, and so you can go in and appreciate the history of these people. And there was a hospital out there, and so much that went on out there. There's just paranormal stuff all over that island.
So what do they have on the island now? Is it set up for tourists?
Yeah, pretty much. You can go out there, and a good way to do it is to take the ferry boat over there from Marin County. It's a short ferry boat ride. Take your bike, because you can bike all over the island, and you can ride all the way around. You can go to the fort that's left over from the Civil War days, where I've seen apparitions of people on the porches of the officers' quarters, things of that sort. You can take a ride over to the hospital, which looks like it's bombed out, but it's still, you can walk around in the place. You can ride over to the immigration center, and that's been restored. You can go in and you can appreciate the history of the people who went through there. But a lot of remnants are still there. There's basically Chinese graffiti on the walls, and when you stand close to this stuff, you can, if you're sensitive, you can pick up the vibe of these people. You can go to various places where there's an old graveyard if you can find it. It's tough to find, but it's near the Civil War era military facility. Supposedly a lot of the graves were moved to the mainland in about 1890, but a lot of graves were not found. And so you go up there and you can pick up on what these places are, especially if you use dowsing rods. Right. There's places all over the island.
Jeff,
it's kind of like Alcatraz.
Oh.
Couple of things on your website that I found interesting. You have paranormal questions of the week, and I've been asked this quite a bit. So I'm going to ask you for your answers on these. What is the best time of the year for ghost hunting? And question number 2, do ghosts actually become attached to a particular object?
Yeah, the time of the year thing comes up every once in a while, and I don't believe there's a particular time of the year when ghost hunters will find that ghosts are more active. They might be on the anniversary of a death or an event like Pearl Harbor or something like that. That's possible, but I think if it's more important to try to identify what time of the year might you as a sensitive feel more sensitive towards these things. And for me, That starts off in September with the equinox. Soon as we start getting into that period of time when the nights are growing longer and days growing shorter, which starts about September 22nd, I start to feel more sensitive. And I don't know exactly what that is. It's certainly not the degree of illumination, because we talked about that earlier. That doesn't figure into it. But I always feel like I'm just becoming much more sensitive. And as we get closer to the longest night of the year, which is December 22nd, that feeling of sensitivity increases tremendously. There's been so much going on in my house in the last few days, that actually the last month or so, that it just ties in with all of that. So for me as a paranormal investigator who uses a psychic method, I'm much more sensitive during this period of time from late September into about January, February, somewhere into there. My sensitivities will be year-round, but this is a time when I'm most sensitive to it. I don't think there's a phase of the moon necessarily when ghosts are more active. I've been to some websites of some paranormal groups, and they always keep on there the phase of the moon, like that has something to do with anything. You know, the degree of illumination varies with the phase of the moon, but you know, the moon is still exerting gravity, whether it's dark or well lit. People don't realize that. You could see a bare sliver of a moon, but it's still exerting gravity on the face of the earth. So I don't think that ties into much of anything at all. And your second question had to do with, can ghosts attach to things? That was the second question, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, I believe so. And we were talking earlier about the antique stories, and I think ghosts do attach to objects. They can certainly do that. They can attach to people, too, and that can become a problem at times. But I think ghosts do attach to objects. And although I think ghosts generally don't travel, generally they don't. There are exceptions to that rule, but generally they don't travel. They will go with an object. And I found ghosts attached to chest of drawers, for instance, at this Cordelia Antique Mart. I found ghosts attached to weapons at different times. And usually it's things that have metal as part of the structure. Not so much clothing, things like made out of fibers like cotton, that sort of thing, cotton and wool. I don't think you're going to get much in the way of attachment. But if there's metal attached to it, the ghost is more likely to attach to the object.
I actually had to take one back to Gettysburg.
Oh, yeah?
2 years ago, yeah.
What did you pick up there? What object was it?
I didn't pick up any object. It just, you know, we always try to say, you know, you got to stay here. You can't come with us. But after a trip to Gettysburg, some things started happening. And actually,
you had a hitchhiker, as it were.
I had a hitchhiker, yes. And Pat from Ghost Soldiers was with me. And we actually took him back and told him, look, you need to get out. This is where you belong, and I didn't have any problems after that.
Well, you're lucky. I have some clients that actually have a lot of trouble with attached spirits. And one client in Chicago who's been having a really rough time for a couple of years. He was with us at Brookdale Lodge, which we talked about earlier, in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and somebody attached to him, and it's been quite troublesome.
Now, Jeff, there's an indication usually in not only the paranormal community but also in the pagan community that towards the end of the year, from like between the autumnal equinox and the winter solstice, is Samhain, from which Halloween is derived, and that the veil between this world and the spirit world is thinner or thins out a lot. So is it possible that might be one reason that you're a lot more sensitive in that time of the year, towards the last third of the year?
Yeah, I've actually thought a little bit about that too. Some explanations of that they say that the time when the veil's thin is only a couple of days, right around what we now think of as Halloween, and others have said no, it's spread out more from the equinox to the solstice. So it may well be that that's why I'm picking up more things, that the veil is thinner, and spirits find it easier to cross over, if you will, or to manifest on our plane of existence. Probably the explanation might be found if we could start to find out what enables a spirit to manifest on our plane of existence. I think that's an essential question for paranormal researchers to deal with. And if we knew that, we might know how to more directly go after these spirits and detect their presence and interact with them.
Now, our time is just shooting right on by, kind of. So I think what we'll do is try and get one or two more in before we start wrapping up. And I do notice that you have a lot of theaters that's in your book. And I know that there's a lot of theaters around that's supposedly haunted. Do you know why theaters is a particular place that would be haunted, a lot of them?
Yeah, they're in my top 5 list of best places to go find ghosts, and especially the older ones. I think they're haunted because there's incredible passion among those who go into the theatrical world. An incredible passion. They just put their emotions right out there. There's all this hope and anguish over the possibility of failing to succeed as a star or as a successful performer. And people who are into drama and musical performers and dancers and so forth really put their heart and soul into it, literally. So I think there's this tremendous energy that's put into it. And so that does two things. It creates a lot of imprints, which are easy to pick up on in theaters. Not only, and the imprints may be apparitions or sounds, but also it attaches the spirit to the place so that after bodily death, they're more likely to stay behind. And they stay behind to continue that performance, which they consider was the greatest moment of their life, or to stay behind to achieve success that somehow eluded them when they were in a physical body, that sort of thing. Sometimes you'll find people in the audience who were those who just were totally in love with the theater. Or they might have been in love with an actor or actress who was up on the stage, and so they show up night after night after night, despite their death, still trying to get the attention of this person that they were madly in love with. So out in the audience, in some of these seats, you'll pick up on imprints or ghosts too, but it's very common to find this up on the stage and in backstage areas and in dressing rooms.
Plus, being an actor myself, a lot of the acting itself, you have actors who express that kind of passion in their performances, not just the backstage drama, and there's a lot of that, believe me. But yeah, just the idea of doing shows, numerous performances that would create sort of an imprint and such. Mm-hmm. You should come down to Los Angeles. I know of at least 2 haunted theaters in which I've had experiences in both, and neither during which I was investigating. They just happened to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those are some of the best places to go. If you have very little time when you're visiting a city, try to find out where one of these old theaters is located and get in there and walk around. And it's amazing what you pick up.
Cool.
Now, Jeff, if we all came out, what's the one place that you would take us? Your favorite place?
Probably the place that's most fun and most productive and fascinating would be the Hornet in Alameda.
What is it?
The Hornet, the USS Hornet in Alameda.
World
War II aircraft carrier, launched late in the war, but still saw plenty of action. It was attacked 65 times by Japanese planes, and it had quite a few deaths on board, not only during World War II, but also during the Korean War and later on. In fact, it's a ship with a dubious distinction of having the highest number of suicides in the Navy. Of all Navy ships, the USS Hornet has had more sailors commit suicide than any other vessel. And then, of course, you've had lots of people who walked into spinning propellers. You've had several people who were killed by jet exhaust and others who were sucked into the intake of jet engines. A lot of pilots crashed on the decks of the Hornet. And you have a lot of ghosts. You have the commanding officer of the ship, too, who walks around the place. And added to all of that, many of us who investigated the Hornet believe that it is a vortex. And there are ghosts on this ship that never served on it. There are sailors and aviators and people like that who have simply come to the ship because it's a portal or a vortex, and they may have friends, colleagues, buddies who are on the ship as ghosts. And so there's hundreds and hundreds of ghosts on this thing, and you can't go aboard the ship without having at least one very vivid paranormal experience.
Wow,
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good place to go to then.
It is. It really is. And it has a management that's really into the paranormal. They run ghost tours at night. They frequently have people stay overnight. It's easy to arrange an overnight stay on the Hornet. No problem at all. So I'd highly recommend the USS Hornet in Alameda.
Well, Jeff, I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight. Our time is, just slipping right on by. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a chance to tell people where they can get all your books and all your website information and all the good stuff pertinent like that.
Right.
And
okay, well, my website is www.jeffdwyer.com. So that's www.jeffdwyer.com. My last name is D-W-Y-E-R. And I post a paranormal question and answer of the week every Sunday. And then midway through the week, I post something called Paranormal Activity, which is a report of ghostly activity in some area, usually places that I've investigated for my books. And you can email me through my website or email me directly at ghosthunter@jeffdwyer.com. All my books are available on Amazon.com. A lot of bookstores carry them as well. But if you go to Amazon.com and enter Dwyer, Jeff, you'll find all my ghost books. For some reason, my textbook, which came out in October, is listed under Jeffrey Dwyer, not Jeff Dwyer. And trying to get Amazon to put them all together.
Yeah.
They're working on it, they say. But this book is The Art and Science of Paranormal Investigation. It is a 350-page textbook. It outlines the technical ways of pursuing ghosts and also psychic methods. And I think it's a really good book for somebody who is trying to move ahead in the area of paranormal investigation.
Yeah, that's what I was saying to start with. There's more in this book than just talking about some of the haunted places around the San Francisco Bay Area. So it's a really good book. So if you don't have it, you need to get one. Jeff, you want to give all of your site information, how people can
Remember, you're clarifying you mean me, not that Jeff.
Yes, Jeffrey, yes.
He's going to be like, I have to do it again? Regarding websites, my own Paranormal View page on my site is jeffgould.net, GEOFF.GOULD.net/2011PNV.htm, at which you can check on past shows. The podcasts will be on there. Also a link to the page that will specifically be talking about this show with links to all the different areas, most of the areas that Jeff spoke about. There will also be links to all of his books will be on the page, and to his website and his Facebook and all that. So it's really stalkery, but don't worry about it. You can also go to theparanormalview.com, which is our website, which Henry says it's kind of down right now, being revamped, as it were.
Right. It should be up, I would say, within the next 2 or 3 days.
Cool. And you can also get your own Paranormal View attire or whatever you want stuck on there at cafepress.com/realbadgershop, all one word. That's about it. And of course, you can find the Paranormal View on Facebook. Feel free to go and like us, and you'll get updates as to what our guests are. And I've started putting weird stuff from around the net I come across. I'll put in interesting stories and haunted areas and sometimes a little paranormal comedy and such.
And I want to thank everybody for being here listening tonight and for those listening from around the world. And I want to thank Jeff Dwyer again for taking time to be with us. Also, I want to remind...
It's been my pleasure.
Well, you're very welcome. I do want to remind everybody about next week, Christmas Eve. We will be doing a live show, and we'll just be sitting around chatting and talking about the magic of Christmas and all sorts of different fun little things. So if for some reason you find yourself with nothing to do or a little bit of free time, stop by and join us. So, and the following week on New Year's Eve, we'll also be doing a live show. That one will be a fun show also. So till then, we will see everybody next week at the same time. And this is Henry Foister.
Craig Rupp.
Jeffrey Gould.
And we will be seeing you next week then. So good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
We're gone. Paranormal View. Come back and visit us again if you dare. You've been listening to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network.
The Paranormal View.